Okay, hi everybody, and we are now continuing a little later. This is program number 18 in a treatise on white magic, video commentaries, and it's number 18 in our series called Rules for Magic on the Astral Plane. As I say, we have 50 programs before this, and they can temporarily at least be found on Makara. www.makara.us, and later will be transferred also to YouTube as these programs are. So just go to Moria Federation Esoteric Education. We've been talking here about the waters of space and have given some kind of esoteric semi-cosmological explanation of these things. And now we're going ahead. This is that mammoth rule 10. It's a big one. And we're more or less on page 275 as far as the book is concerned. Page 275. And we ended a few days ago, page 275. Here's where we're beginning. So, anyway, bringing the analogy, let's see if oh goodness, I don't have all the things that I need, unfortunately, but I'm about to acquire a few of them. Here's the AAB diagrams, and let's just see, we can open this egoic lotus, but really it's the one that Tuya made is better. So I'm going to do that one. It's more accurate, really. And this is, okay. And here are the AAB diagrams from Tuya. And she will, decide when some of these can be released. And I'm sure that you will appreciate having them. As I say, they really all belong to DK. There's no way we can, or ever would, put some kind of copyright on them. No, they belong to DK, and all they are is an elaboration of some of the implications found in these charts, plus, the advantages of working with multiple colors that the computer has now, that the books at that time, 90 something years ago, did not have. The original version of a treatise on cosmic fire had these. Okay, and the sun keeps coming in and out, and it makes this picture look strange, but try to bear with that. So anyway, now, after commenting on the old commentary, which all of us, I think, really have to attend to because it is a type of symbolic language which takes us onto the plane where the intuition can be accessed. Remember that it's the fourth subplane of the fourth cosmic plane, the fourth subplane of the fourth systemic plane, which is really the intuitive plane. Up to that point, intuition is involved, but it's not intuition. The other subplanes of that plane have to do with response to the four sounds, with healing, with divine vision, and finally with intuition itself. So bringing the analogy down closer still, because that's DK's purpose, not simply to describe things in cosmological terms, but to make things extremely practical for us, because we are struggling students who need to have light thrown upon our path, not only by our own supervising angel of the presence, solar angel, but by the master, the teacher himself. Bringing the analogy down closer still, The human kingdom itself is an analogous state of consciousness to the human unit through its subjective force existence, and from the standpoint of consciousness, provides the waters of space in which a human being thrives and grows. So, looking here um, at the human, I'd like to be able to get this proper, human kingdom as a great matrix in which the individual human being has its place and is bathed in subjective energies and thus grows. Again, we are met in the fourth kingdom with expressions of the same seven forces. We don't know how high these seven forces go, but I suspect, very, very high, up to the very origin of any universe, I suspect. I think that, there's a universal 1, 2, 3, 7, 12, and so forth. Again, we are met in the fourth kingdom with expressions of the same seven forces, and as man awakens to a recognition of the seven rays, or types, and begins to work consciously with them, he is taking the first step towards transcending them and controlling them within his field of operation. And it might be said always the seven rays must be transcended on a given level, but they are met again on still higher levels. DK tells us something about a very advanced stage in which all the rays are controlled simultaneously and even transcended. And of course, once we enter into the state of pure being, naturally there's no room for any distinction whatsoever. There's no room ultimately even for a 1, let alone a 2 or a 3 or a 7. All is homogeneous. But there are high human states in which the transcendence of the seven rays as we normally encounter them can be achieved. But then we simply move on and encounter them yet again on the level of the planetary logoi or solar logoi. Excuse me. Or, still beyond. That beyond exists, but we have only the sketchiest idea of what it might be, the 7 solar systems, and we can assign rays to them, and then we can assign rays to 7 constellations, which are the chakras, normal chakras within the one about whom naught may be said, but the one about whom naught may be said is one of 7 major, and that thing in which it is one of 7 is also one of 7, and on we go. That one chart, I think, gives us a little bit of an idea. It's from DK's Cosmic Fire Charts, and there it is. You see somehow this amazing consolidation of septonates as we rise. We don't know how far we're going here, and the word Parabrahm, of course, usually means the one and only absolutely homogeneous being than which there is no other, but he relativizes the term occasionally, and we see such a thing here as if I can find it, a cosmic parabrahm. See, this is called a cosmic parabrahman, parabrahman, the same, and because it's a cosmic parabrahm, it's not the one and only parabrahman. Okay, get the idea, I think. Okay, so anyway, we're in this fourth kingdom. This fourth kingdom is in the process, many of its beings being elevated into the fifth. The fourth will remain, of course. It has to receive the up and coming animal souls. It has to do that, definitely. So anyway, the same seven forces, and man awakens to a recognition of the seven razor types and begins to work consciously with them. This is what we're trying to do, to recognize ourselves and others in terms of these foundational energies and to deal with them accordingly, helpfully, in ways that will advance their evolution. And then by doing that, we're taking our first step towards eventually transcending them, but not forever, because they're always met on a higher turn of the spiral that may be called other things. Sometimes they're called seven spirits before the throne, and it all depends what kind of throne we're talking about. The logos of the seven solar systems has its own throne. The one about whom not may be said has its own throne. Knowledge of the seven ray types is beginning to permeate among the thinkers of the race, and this knowledge was in past eons the prerogative of the initiates of the time. So, the secrets of the kingdom of heaven are being shouted from the rooftops, and we are among those who are out on the rooftops shouting them and hoping that they will be picked up by others who can handle them, and that we are not, like John the Baptist considered himself, a voice crying in the wilderness. Hence, latent in the astrological presentation is that information which will lead disciples to realization and which will put them en rapport with the seven planetary schemes. And you have to be, okay, no. That's what happens when I try to go too fast. Let's just say however, okay, going backwards. One has to be quite an initiate to be truly en rapport with the seven planetary SCHS schemes. Okay, so let's see if I can, I'm always making trouble for myself here, but let's see if I can go backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. So, seven planetary schemes, and then what occurs? Real developments in astrology may not be looked for. Real developments, well, we have a few that we're grateful for. Some knowledge we're grateful for. Real developments in astrology may not be looked for, however, until the new age is really with us and the new orientation achieved. And, let's just say that capturing my bracket, this will certainly be after 2117, when the vernal equinox aligns, mathematically, he tells us, with the last degree of Aquarius. Everything seems to move backwards in this sort of regression that we call the precession of the equinoxes. Okay. Now the next paragraph, interesting. The form of humanity is completed. I guess you could say it's not yet born into the fifth kingdom of nature, but its form, in accordance with this fourth round on our fourth chain, is completed. Its right placement, now he's carrying on the analogy of the right placement of the infinite in order to achieve a proper birth without complication. Its right placement within the womb of matter is the objective of hierarchy with the consequent implications. You might almost say, how can we put it here? That this requires, in some cases, this requires medical intervention, and humanity is now so distressed and so warped and perverted from previous experiences and from the attack of the Black Lodge in Atlantean times and continuing, that the right placement uh, guaranteeing or providing for the proper type of birth without complication is not yet accomplished. The need at this time is terrific, and here's DK, who is not an exaggerating teacher, okay? When he begs, he begs. When he uses a word like terrific, he means it. When he offers injunctions that seem extreme, he means it. We have to take him seriously, and all of us, of course, could take him far more seriously than we do. The need at this time is terrific, and the soul is at the birthing in humanity as a whole. Not all, okay, let's do this. Not all will at this time enter the fifth kingdom of nature, but many will. You can't, if you go to Cosmic Fire and it tells you about even some of those who came to the moon chain, even some of those will not be on the path until the next round. So sometimes it seems that things go very slowly, but at other times it seems that for those who can, a great equal it, a great speeding up is now occurring. So let us, as students of decay at this decisive time, be among those for whom speed is being applied. What did he say? Something like the major sin or capital sin or foremost sin, something of that nature, of the average initiate is sloth. So let's carry those ideas in our mind. Cosmically speaking, if right direction of the forces of the human kingdom is now achieved, there will be manifested on the earth a humanity which will, this is beautiful, manifest a purpose, a beauty, and a form. There we have the first three aspects of divinity, basically, which will be full expressions of an inner spiritual reality and in line with egoic purpose. What can we call it? Okay, come. Hopefully, okay. The ego of the fourth kingdom of nature, the human kingdom. We're not only talking about the egoic purpose of an individual, we're talking about the egoic purpose of a great kingdom. And kingdoms, are pervasive not only on our planet, but on all the other planets as well. Now, that's what we want. And he says, cosmically speaking. So this depends, this depends on appropriating at least systemic energies and maybe zodiacal energies, which in one sense, let's spell it, are cosmic. Okay, other eventualities can be sensed and are sadly possible. If you go to, I'm not sure it's printed anymore, but if you go to the introduction, which I think the Tibetan wrote, of the problems of humanity in its first edition, you will find some of these rather dire possibilities offered. And I think only later will we learn how the hierarchy worked and sacrificed to have us as a kingdom avoid fulfilling those implications, even though they are checked in terms of impinging upon our free will. Other eventualities can be sensed as sadly possible, but these we will not consider, for it is the hope and the belief of the watching brothers that men will transcend all the undesirable eventualities and make the goal. Well, written, excuse me, in the late 20s and early 30s of the last century, war came. The hierarchy was, quote, so to speak, packing its bags. That was forestalled by action on the part of the Lords of Liberation, answering to a dire invocation from inchoate humanity, or humanity expressing itself in an inchoate manner, but still begging for a better way, we might say, in its invocation. But hierarchy was packing its bags in the winter of 42, and then the sun moved northward. And even later, dire warnings were given, and we are still under that threat. Now, Foster Bailey, it can be presumed he was the eventual leader of the Lucis Trust, and he wrote, he had contact with the Tibetan. It does definitely seem. And he wrote somewhere in the early 50s that the Tibetan had assured him at that time that there would be no nuclear war, no complete wipeout of humanity. When he wrote The Problems of Humanity, and that introduction, it was still in the 40s, and maybe certain developments occurred which no longer made the destruction of humanity a vision or a possibility which could be visioned, as the Tibetans said. Well, we're still working under the sword. And many things are possible because under the Syrian system of initiation and training, we are not allowed to, or it is not allowed, that free will be violated. One word here and one hint: the hierarchy of the planet constitutes symbolically the head center of humanity, and their forces constitute the brain center. This is interesting because the hierarchy is the heart center of the planet, but maybe the what can we say, the the relationship to humanity here, the head center, yeah, because within humanity, it's the new group of world servers, perhaps, that is constituting the Ajna center. So there are different kinds of assignments of chakras: those that apply to the entire planet, and those that apply to humanity as a kingdom, and these chakras go all the way down to the lower types of humanity who occupy a lower chakric position. And maybe we can say that the members of the new group of world servers occupy a position within humanity which is the Ajna center. In other contexts, it seems that they are the Ajna center for the entire planet. But then there are certain contexts in which humanity as a whole appears to be not only the throat center of the entire planet, but the Ajna center as well. At least that's a coming development. So we'll just take this at face value. The hierarchy of the planet in its directorial mode, because it does receive through its Chohans directly from Shambhala, constitutes symbolically the head center of humanity, and the forces. See, the head center is being distinguished here from the brain, okay, and their forces, which are more material, constitute the brain forces, the human brain, or the brain of humanity. These correspondences, I admit, they are very variable, and we have to see the context in which we are working. Now, in the new esoteric schools, as I can foresee it, A lot of the academic work will be directed towards understanding these correspondences in an accurate manner. Right now, I include myself, we understand pieces of the puzzle. On the physical plane, there are a large band of aspirants, probationary disciples, and accepted disciples who are seeking to be responsive to this head center, some consciously and some unconsciously. So we have hierarchy as head center, and also in a larger planetary context, hierarchy as a heart center, in which humanity is the throat center, or developing its position as an ajna center, and especially the new group of world servers in that context. They are becoming more and more that way. Now, here's my favorite thing where I don't get to save as, and hopefully this will save properly. It's quite a big file, and one day I hope I don't wake up in the morning and discover that the whole file is corrupt. All right. They are gathered from all fields of expression according to their rays, right? But are all creative in some way or another. We might say, thus, the throat center activity. This is the center of creativity, and the urge to the, creative intelligence is a title that the Tibetan says he prefers for the third ray, the ray of creative intelligence. They, in their turn, constitute what might be considered or called the pineal gland of humanity. These are interesting correspondences. So they can be intuitively activated. A large band of spiritual workers are the pineal gland of humanity. Now, in the larger context, humanity as a whole, as I said, is the throat center, considering the Sanat Kumara, and even verging upon the Ajna center, but I imagine that it's the higher parts of humanity which are taking the position of Ajna center. Now we're becoming very concrete. So hierarchical forces are brain forces, and this large band of aspirants, probationary disciples, note the distinction there, and accepted disciples who are seeking to become responsive to the head center, responsive to hierarchy. So when we're responding to hierarchy, we are responding to a directorial impulse, which relates to the head center, and we're also responding to a love-wisdom impulse, an inclusive impulse which relates to the heart in the larger context, the heart of Sanat Kumara, just the way Shambhala, in that case, is the head and not the hierarchy. Okay, it's the head center, Shambhala, in the larger context. As in individual man, this is usually dormant and asleep. So in humanity, this group of cells, note how he calls this that, within the brain of the body corporate is dormant. So basically he's saying, no, he's not saying it that way. He's saying aspirants, okay, aspirants, probationary, PRBD, no, okay, probationary disciples, and even disciples who are accepted are asleep in a spiritual sense. And we're trying to wake up, right? Are dormant, asleep. Sometimes, maybe you do too, feel there's a veil over my consciousness, and I seek for the removal of that veil because I know every once in a while it lifts, and I said, oh my God, look at that. And then, of course, the veil descends again until it gets worn away, maybe Master Mori would say through cosmic perception. That's one of the reasons why the study of cosmology is very useful. It does seem to destroy the veil which prevents the realization of unity and later very deep identification with all perceptions. Is dormant. Okay. Now, what else? Okay, it's dormant, but thrilling to the vibrations of the head center, the occult hierarchy. Now, oh goodness, it always does that. In the individual man, the head center stimulates I suppose, etheric pineal gland and the dense pineal gland. We read all the time about how we have to establish a relationship between the etheric head center, and remember, hierarchy is located, now at least, and by and large, upon the cosmic etheric levels, and therefore is etheric in a certain sense. And the analogy holds, we have to establish as individuals a relationship between the etheric higher head center and the pineal gland. And then, of course, and that area around the brain, which is associated with the pineal gland, and only then can we become the actual white magician. Well, anyway, we're talking about aspirants, probationary disciples, and remember, he's distinguishing between them somehow, and even though we're all aspirants in a way, and all on probation in a way for a long time, even our, cosmically, our planetary logos is on probation, and our solar logos, not yet a sacred solar logos, is a disciple who in a way is on probation, though truly a cosmic disciple, and almost to the point where Sirius is, just like our Earth is almost to the point where Venus is. It'll take a while, but getting there. Some of the cells are awake. Let's hope that applies to us, or at least awakening. Some of the cells are awake. Let them intensify their endeavor and so awaken others. So what is this telling us? If we work upon ourselves and awaken ourselves, we will contribute to the awakening of others. So, the more you can radiate the spiritual vibration, and others experience that as a kind of a darshan, a lesser darshan, being in the presence of someone who has really awakened something in themselves, just as we would, look to a very high teacher and experience that darshan. That will be a valuable aid in helping humanity, and especially the aspirants, probationary disciples, and disciples wake up. Yeah, waking up. That's what we want. The waking up of the disciples. That's what we want. Okay, let's see what we got here. Right, okay. The pioneers of the human family. You just can't forget what's in this book, a treatise on white magic. You can think you can move on to other books, but you can and you can't. You always have to double back and pick up what the Tibetan has said because he is scrupulous about not repeating himself unless he intends to. And sometimes a jewel of information is dropped in the early days, well, not dropped, but held forth, which can be found nowhere else, and which is an utter necessity, a necessitous piece of knowledge to make sense of the later material which is given. So read all the Tibetan as if it were a great sphere of knowledge which will lead to enlightenment and to wisdom when when the items of information are sufficiently cross-referenced. That's all I'm trying to do in this series of commentaries. Bring in that Mercurian cross-referencing, which will allow the light to break forth in new and unexpected ways. The Tibetan has said it. He's said what has to be said to us at this present time. But we can make more of his books than simply memorizing what he said. We can cross-reference. We can link up with other sections of the spherical presentation, which presents something on the nature of the subject that we are now studying, and greater light can break forth. We want that illumination of the soul and eventually of the higher mind and other aspects of ourselves so that we can really participate intelligently in the divine plan. The pioneers of the human family, he says, scientists, thinkers, and artists constitute the pituitary body. Now, it's quite an analogy and a distinction. So note the distinction between the spiritual types and the, quote, pioneers, who are not yet concerned with spirituality per se. Of course, many do evolve onto that. I remember, in my own case, if I can explain, as an artist, a singer, an actor, a stage director, all Ray Force stuff, and then the evolution onto the spiritual path. So, I didn't stay there. Maybe I recapitulated, whatever. But, you cannot tell whether a person, or maybe you can tell, whether a person will stay in the pituitary area for the entire life or will move in the direction of the pineal gland, because the work of being a pioneer, a scientist, a thinker, an artist was preliminary and a jumping off point into further possibilities. Examine your own life, and maybe some sort of life crisis would indicate to you that a change was imminent, because here you are studying Master DK intensively, as if it were, as Blavatsky might say, a great last hope, and maybe leaving behind some of the things that preoccupied you in the earlier part of your life. So you've moved into the area of the pineal gland, which is essentially movement into the area of the soul and movement into the area of the spiritual hierarchy considered as the brain of humanity. Anyway, these pioneers, because the pituitary is concrete, they express the concrete mind, but lack the intuitive perception and idealism which would place them, symbolically speaking, in the pineal gland. They are nevertheless brilliant, expressive, and investigating, and sometimes a lot more brilliant than the disciples, sometimes more brilliant than the spiritual types, so we must never underestimate. And of course, their work can lead into intuitive perception. You see many artists that have this astral Buddhic thing. They don't know how they get there necessarily, They don't necessarily think it through in terms of occult meditation, but they arrive. They arrive at an intuitive impression, and the art of the future, of course, as DK tells us in Esoteric Psychology 1, the methods of inducing soul control, it will be under the intuition. The objective of the hierarchy, again, symbolically speaking, he doesn't want us to think too anatomically in this particular case. The objective of the hierarchy, again, symbolically speaking, is to make the pineal gland so potent and therefore so attractive that the pituitary body of cell lives may be stimulated and thus a close interplay be brought about. Okay, save as, always save as, and hope for the best. Okay, so how strong is the soul in us? This is another way. Can it really attract the personality in us so that there's a true interplay between soul and personality? So let's say true interplay between soul and personality. Personality individually and in terms of humanity. So interactivity, and in a way, this is the interplay between Vulcan and Venus. They eventually marry, you know. I don't think it was such a happy marriage at first. The personality wanting something much different than the more severe Vulcan wanted. Well, Vulcan rules the head center and Venus and its pineal gland in a way, and Venus rules the ajna center. There is another center there. I saw a lady today from Nepal, and the dot, red dot, was not where you expected. It was right at the hairline, which tells us something about yet another center, maybe sometimes called the brow center, which has to be activated. And when it comes to the horn of the unicorn, it's difficult to say, does it arise from the ajna center or from this other more esoteric center? In any case, if we want that horn to arise, we increase our perception and increase our defense of the divine plan. We are willing to fight, the fighting and triumphant beast, the unicorn, the initiate for the higher good. And we also detect certain things, and we use this in our glamour work. This organ, in a way, everyone's unicorn horn, as developing as an organ of dissipation of glamour. So anyway, the objective of hierarchy, again, symbolically, which means not precisely anatomically, is to make the pineal gland in humanity, we might say, and among human beings, and in all aspirants, probationers, and true disciples, and certainly within initiates, so potent and therefore so attractive. It's that first ray attractiveness, in a way, that the pituitary body of cell lives may be stimulated and thus a close interplay be brought about. And this is telling us a lot about the kind of effect that people like ourselves should have upon these types that he mentions. Of course, often they, as we, live in our own worlds or their own worlds, and the interplay is not necessarily easy. I have, being Cancer rising, I have what you call friendship retention. And a lot of people from my early life experience that somehow I remain connected with, you know, looking backwards, having that sense of history. And what I often discover is that they are still working at that pituitary level very brilliantly, some of them more brilliant than I am for sure, concretely brilliant. But to make the bridge to this intangible soul being and to make the bridge, a greater bridge into the spiritual triad is just not within their range of interest or even possibilities at this time. So, and being the proselytizing type, it's kind of my job, maybe they don't consider so, to awaken my friends to greater possibilities, even as they remind me of all the concrete knowledge that I have not attained and have yet to attain. Okay, anyway, an interplay will be brought about between the pituitary and the pineal, thus between the soul and or between the personality, pituitary and ajna, and between the head center, pineal, and soul. Those are, and then when you add the alpha major in, you do have the possibility of creating the initiate through that activated triangle, and then the real magnetism of healing can occur. Okay, so anyway, this interplay between Vulcan and Venus, this will lead to such potent action that there will be a streaming forth of new cells to the pineal gland, and at the same time such a strong reaction set up that the entire body will be affected, resulting in the streaming upward of many stimulated lives to take the places of those who are finding their way into the center of hierarchical endeavor. Well, there's the whole process for us. If we stimulate certain people, then other people will also be stimulated, and there will be a general rising. So we can't raise everybody, nor is it our job to do so, nor are we capable of doing so. However, if we stimulate the ones we can stimulate, then they in turn will stimulate those they can stimulate, and vice versa, onward and onward, and there will be the rising, the general rising of human cells to the next higher center. So this is about the general rising of human cells from a lower center to the next higher center. So an ongoing process. And so we can't say, well, I can't reach out and reach all of humanity. Of course not. We can't. Nobody can. Even the Christ couldn't do it. Not everybody. Nor the Buddha. Not everybody. Widely famous, of course, and widely respected and revered, but not everybody. So our circle may be very small. Okay. But let us at least stimulate those we can stimulate who inevitably will pass on the stimulation, and on it will go. And cells will move from center to center, we ourselves. In terms of our life within the planetary logos, we can be considered cells and much smaller units in relation to larger encompassing beings and wholes. All right, let's see what else is here. The waters of space in which this reorientation and reversal of tendencies is progressing are in a state of violent turmoil. What can we consider these waters to be? I want to say, well, consider them to be all the personality forces, etheric, no, etheric, astral, and even mental. There is ferment and chaotic movement until we get a hold of it and really understand what it is. So we're in a very disturbed environment from which we have to attract and gain strength and grow. He tells us, in the East, I don't know if it's true anymore, but there's a settled environment and occultism can flourish. But now occultism is moving to the West with its second ray soul, the Western Hemisphere with its second ray soul, and in the East, A lot of third rate, a lot of commercialism, not a lot of imitation of that which made possible the rising of the West at an earlier time. Suffice it to say, things are not predictable now. Things are chaotic now. Maybe there is no or very few places where a truly settled occult environment exists in which true occult study and application can occur. Maybe there was more of that at the time that the Tibetan wrote these books about possibilities of real occult study. Remember, this little section is called Hindrances to Occult Study. So remember, oh, don't want that. Remember, no, something is going on here. I don't want this. Okay, not sure how to do this. How to get rid of that R that's there. Anyway, I'll just leave it for the moment. Remember, this is a section uh, about hindrances to occult study. They come in all manner of shapes and forms, and you may find them in your home, you may find them in your environment, you may find them in your workplace. There is a settled pattern, which is a condition and not an archetypal condition, which is inimical to your progress upon the path and which has an entirely different set of values. So somehow through skill and action, we have to find the way to appreciate, absorb, and apply these new values. Alice Bailey, packing sardines, as we're told in the unfinished autobiography, found a way, she found a way to read and iron and take care of the children all at the same time. I can almost imagine her, and maybe she said so, rocking the cradle with the foot, doing the ironing, and reading on the side. Total Gemini multitasking approach. Okay, the vortex of conflicting desire. There are all those, the hierarchy is impacting, the Black Lodge is impacting the spiritual ferment and the life of desire. They are all impacting the astral plane. The energy of fear is impacting. We're getting close to the point where we're going to realize that we are not the dense physical body, and that we can. I just realized, people have their bucket list, everything they want to do before they die, and as we say in English, kick the bucket. But the bucket is the vessel, it is the outer form, and all the waters of life are stored in the bucket. So when we kick the bucket, we're in a way rejecting the vessel and identifying with a higher type of form. Oh boy. I remember, I like films. I don't get to so many of them, but there was a film called It's a Mad, Mad World. And it was, I don't know, 30 years ago or 40 years ago. And some of the old stars like Sid Caesar and Jimmy Durante, and, they're gone now. But it all begins with Jimmy Durante. He's lying there just about ready to die. Maybe he's been in a car accident or shot. I don't know what. And just at the end of his last words, his left foot straightens out and kicks a bucket, which rolls all the way down the mountain. He kicked the bucket. Now, that doesn't mean we have to spurn the globe of Earth as if, kicking it like a ball, as the different planetary ray lords advise one of the ray lords, don't do that, they say to the sixth ray lord. We don't have to do that, but we can certainly remember the dispensability of the bucket. And, study one's bucket list. It tells us about our desires. The vortex of conflicting desire in which men find themselves is now chaotic and so potent that these waters are stirred to their very depths. Now remember, he is enlarging. The the waters do not mean only one thing, but are various and with various parts. In a way, uh, all uh, all of matter is water from the symbolic perspective. So, we're being nourished by the certain waters of life, and the thought form from the soul and mental plane has to come down and be especially nourished by the waters of desire, right desire, hopefully, that will help us set our form upon the proper path. But the waters are more than that. The waters of space are vast, and all the different logoi are being, in a way, bathed and nourished uh, by, within and by the appropriate waters of space. Students of modern history and of social order are faced with an unprecedented condition corresponding in the corporate body of humanity to that upheaval in the life of an aspirant which always precedes the passing on to the path of discipleship. So, is this the first degree or earlier? If earlier, then we have fifth. If earlier, then we have fifth petal issues, uh, ruled by Scorpio, or by Leo, the fifth sign, and Scorpio, which is number 5 when we start the zodiac in the clockwise manner with Pisces. Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, and then Scorpio, number 5. So, upheaval, and it's getting more and more upheaved. Matter of fact, the next few years, I think we face climatically an upheaval, which I think will bring people to their senses or be responsible for a verdict that will mean possibly the end of humanity as we know it. Okay, so we're faced with an unprecedented condition, and remember, late 20s, early 30s. That's when this was written. Hence, but this upheaval is natural enough because the aspirant experiences it. And remember that we become an aspirant as we are unfolding the fifth petal, and there's some, related unfolding of a lesser degree in petals ahead simultaneously. Hence, there is no cause for depression or undue anxiety, but only ardent desire that the transition may be made in due time and order, and be neither too rapid, hence destructive to all right ties and affiliations, nor too prolonged, and so strain beyond endurance the sorely tried fabric of humanity. Well, we see, I guess here, and by the way, we're just about at an hour, but I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue because time is short and I don't always have the opportunity to work in this way. So I will continue the best I can. But anyway, hierarchy is doing a balancing act. The divine plan cannot be revealed too soon nor too late. The destruction of that which is of value would ensue should everything be too rapid and not enough time be given for proper adjustment. And if this is too prolonged, then humanity might just wear out. Just the way an individual can wear out, humanity might wear out as well. So, there's where Libra enters the way hierarchy does things. And because hierarchy represents very much the soul of our, well, Sanat Kumara, or let's just say the soul of our planetary chain here, uh, it has to wield this Libran energy in order to keep the balance, because the balance is related to the divine plan, and the divine plan is related to the atomic plane, which is ruled by the triangle, which is ruled by Libra, the triangle. So maintain in our own lives and maintain planetarily a constructive balance, which does not allow the destruction which can occur on either side between, what is it, Scylla and Charybdis. These are either, I forget, two whirlpools or one rock and one whirlpool. And anyway, too far on either side, destruction lies, and you have to be able to navigate on the middle path between them. So anyway, things can look good. Yeah, we're at that hour point, but I go on. Things can look good if we realize that this is no terrible situation, but full of promise, just the way the stresses and strains through which the aspirant passes uh, predict a possible good outcome and are full of promise. All new manifestations in all kingdoms and all ages must come slowly and therefore safely to the birthing. Here we have my usual inability. No. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Here we have the wise use of slow action on the second ray. So, make haste slowly. This is what that very second ray individual, Roberto Seggioli, tended to emphasize, that ancient statement, valuable for all disciples, make haste slowly. That was what he said. Okay. All new forms, if they are ultimately to carry weight and gather adequate momentum to carry them through their life cycle, must be built in silent objectivity, in order that the building may be strong and sure, and the inner contact with the Creator, human or divine, and true conformity to the pattern may be substantial and unbreakable. What do we have here? This is the real caution of the second ray type. This is true of a universe. What does he mean by a universe? The universe, a universe, maybe the one universe, but even a solar system has been called a universe, and galaxies have been called island universes. This is true of a universe, a kingdom in nature, or a thought form created by a human thinker. So slow but steady makes the race. This is the old story of the tortoise and the hare, with the brilliant hare not succeeding, where the slow and steady tortoise succeeded. Maybe some of us would rather be the hare than the tortoise, but usually in our periods of personality expression and personality exaltation, which precede any true humbling which is required on the path, we do go through that period of personality exaltation where we may be more like the hare, and seek for a more spectacular life. But as DK has told us, it's frequently the unspectacular human being who makes the grade. And, no matter what we have been, spectacular in the eyes of others or in the eyes of ourselves, may we settle down so into a constructive non spectacularity or non-spectacularness, ordinariness in a way, which will allow us really slowly and surely to avoid the pitfalls, or some of them, of the path, and not living high on ourselves, enter into destructive ways. You know, you've sometimes seen how people who seem to have everything in the world, fame and riches and all the rest, they do, you know, is this all there is? And they commit suicide. And it's just a terrible thing to see because they haven't been educated in the possibilities which slow and steady action could unfold for them. So we need an ardent desire that, you know, I mean, DK, of course, he's a very mental master in a way, but certainly he had this tremendous quality of ardent desirousness for the high things. And that's what we need. The desire is ardent, but the method is measured and balanced and within control. You can only imagine what would happen to the average magician if they, what do they say, you know, humorously got their spells mixed. You know, what would you turn into, and what destructive forces would you let in? Everything has to be under control. Even intuition has to be invoked under control, and its indications have to be carried out under controlled and expansive thought. This may be a little stultifying to the so-called inspirational type, but they're often inspired by the astral body and not really by the intuition. So, slow but steady makes the race, and we're all in that race. We're in the human race, and we've been proceeding on this path a long time, some of us many years, relatively, but nothing compared to what Master DK has done over centuries and even millennia. If he was truly the second in command in the Pythagorean Academy, that's 2,500 or 2,600 years ago, 2,500 years ago. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of study. And he never relented in this way on the studential path. He says he's traveled a little longer. Well, maybe for a person who thinks in terms of centuries, that is just a little longer. But on the other hand, you know, compared to what we've done, it seems like a very great accomplishment. So in all form building, the technique of construction remains basically the same, and the rules and realizations may be summed up in the following aphoristic phrases. So a fine teacher is always offering these aphorisms, and I'd like very much if I could do it, but I don't seem immediately to be able to get rid of, maybe I can, I don't know if I can get rid of, no. All right, I'd like to get rid of that R. That R, which can be associated with Mars, you know, the growl of the R. Header and footer. Maybe I can do that. Header and footer. And edit the header and get rid of it. Good. All right. Maybe I succeeded. I only want a header when I want a header, and not otherwise. So the following aphoristic phrases. Let the creator know himself to be the builder and not the building. Wow. This is an issue about, let's just say, non-identification with that which is built. Now, how many of us get absorbed in our creations in such a way that we think of ourselves as our creations? And when something happens to our creation, we're not happy, and we forget who we are. And that's including our body. You know, in a way, our body is a creation, and we identify so deeply with our body that when something happens, we are in real trouble. So, yes, we come to a very interesting section. Sorry, I was interrupted and, for 40 minutes or so. So trying to regain my train of thought here. What the Tibetan advises, what does he call it? In all form building, the technique of construction remains basically the same. And the rules and realizations may be summed up in the following aphoristic phrases. It's so interesting, the Tibetan, speaking about form building, his, how to know what are his rays, but obviously the second ray, soul, and he has a very strong third sub-ray in the soul, I believe, and a third ray monad as one of the monads. Who knows what it's like on the logoic plane? But he has that, I think, seventh ray, and the second ray is the ray of form building, and the seventh ray is the ray of manifestation. And the second and the seventh rays together have a tremendous healing possibility. They are the two major healing rays. So he is to be one of the externalizing masters, and I suppose it will be through a Maya Varupa of some kind, and he will be teaching the methods of esoteric healing. So the seventh ray is involved in all of this form building, and those disciples who have a strong material bias are involved in the healing work, he tells us. They have to have a good sense of what is matter, what is ether, although he, as we realize, encompassing 5 masters in his ashram, something of that nature, and 5 masters is the supervisor and is capable along all these lines. All right, so let the creator know himself to be the builder and not the building. Non-identification with that which is built. When we identify ourselves with the form, all kinds of imprisonment occurs, and of course mistaken identity is the great factor which makes us identify with the form. So we have to disidentify. This was something that comes in Assagioli's work and throughout Raja Yoga. I have, but I am not. I have, but I am not. Okay. Let him desist from dealing with the raw material on the physical plane, and let him study the pattern and the blueprints, acting as an agent of the divine mind. So the elementals are the raw materials, and the devas that he can manipulate can direct these raw materials into patterns which reflect or correspond to the magician's intention. So, we have to have the hands-on approach, of course, to a degree, but when we find that we can stand at a point of leverage, which is more powerful than the strictly human point, the point working from the very lowest plane, then we should stand at that point. We should stand at a point of power which is available to us and from which we can simply get more done. Let him use 2 energies and work with 3 laws. Well, let's see what he has in mind here. Okay. Let him work with two energies, use two energies, and work with three laws. These are the dynamic energy of purpose conforming to the plan. Well, sometimes I've thought that plan conforms to the purpose, but anyway, they are so related, plan being more specific in time and space, and the magnetic energy of desire. These are related to the mental and astral planes, drawing the builders to the center of the endeavor. So we're not yet discussing the three laws. Now, what are these laws? We do have the law of synthesis, cosmic law, law of attraction, and the law of economy. I suppose they could be considered involved on some level. So what do we have here? Really, we have energy of purpose, uh, and the energy of desire, and at least the reflection of the three cosmic laws of synthesis, attraction, and economy. At least that. But let's see how he elaborates this as we move on. I guess, we're chastened if we think of this as simply an early book that is of interest only to beginning students. I can't imagine anything DK says that is of interest only to beginning students. Let these three laws hold sway. The law of synthetic limitation. Here he does. Okay. All right. So they are correlated, but a little more differentiated. These laws, as here given, are correlated to the three cosmic laws, but are more specific. So synthetic limitation, what is that? It's certainly on the first ray, and it defines the ring pass knot while guaranteeing the integrity of the whole. The ring pass knot is defined, and also the integrity and unity of the whole. A vibratory interplay, that's a second ray factor. Second, as usual, if I make a mistake, it's a big one, second ray factor. And between the poles, let's see if I can get this. Oh, why do I even bother writing all these things down? Well, maybe they'll be of some use sometime. Second ray factor between the poles, and of active precipitation, obviously, this is connected with the third ray. What do we have? Another three things that we have. Three first principles are isolated. Let's see if I write down IU, manifested existence. Okay, let me just try this. Isolated, no, in universe. ISU, isolated unity, and inclusive reason, inclusive reason, and presented attributes, which involve the precipitation of such attributes. Okay, let him deal first with the outer builders. Now, what I want to do is go over here and hope that I'm in the right place. Sorry for the mechanical problems here. Right. Let him first deal. All right, there's only one of them, and we ought to be able to find it. With the outer builders. All right, okay. Right, that is the next one. So, yes, but something has been erased, as I suspected. Right, vibratory interplay and precipitate. The one concerns the life. Here we go. So I'll just copy this and get this here. The one concerns the life, the second concerns the building, and the third produces manifested existence. So always, look for the 1, 2, 3 of things or the particular level at which the 1, 2, 3 may be reflected. Okay, the one concerns the life, synthetic limitation. The second concerns the building, vibratory interplay. What is to be gained by vibratory interplay? An exchange of substances, the way that the greater affects the lesser and the lesser responds to the greater, the high, setting the pattern for the low responding to the high, and so forth. And the third, manifested existence. So obviously the one concerns the life, VIBY. Okay. Things are jumping for me right now. Okay, the life. No, I see what has happened. I see what has happened. Sorry. The one concerns the life, and this is vibratory interplay. No, I'm sorry. The one concerns the life is synthetic limitation. The second concerns the building, and this is vibratory interplay. And we think about how we try to construct anything in the group work that's involved, and the kind of interplay of vibrations which goes to a rich and organized whole. And the third produces manifested existence, and we just simply have called this active precipitation. Okay, so the three laws have to hold sway, and the two energies, there must be divine purpose behind it, must correlate with the divine plan, whichever represents which. It's usually the plan representing the purpose. And also the energy of desire, high desire, the desire of the soul to see something positive manifested, and three cosmic laws. And then we have discovered what are these three cosmic laws, or at least we've discovered what are the three laws. They may originate in cosmic laws, but by the time we bring them down to a certain level where it concerns the individual human being as a magician, then they're called something else. Okay. Although all of these things would be applicable to a number of entities, to an entity ruling a kingdom, to a globe lord, a chain lord, a scheme lord, planetary logos. All of these stages are applicable to the process through which it must go when attempting to complete the magical process. Let him first deal with the outer builders, sending his call to the periphery of his circle of influence. I suppose this is the usual environment and much physical and etheric activity. ETH. All right, let's see if we can make an etheric out of that. Etheric plane, etheric. Okay, there we go. Try that. Right. So, and etheric. Now, whatever is this outer plane, but the inner subjective sources are not much considered here. Now we have to see what he considers to be inner, because from certain perspectives, anything that has to do with the personality, the astral vehicle, the normal mental vehicle, it's all considered objective compared to the soul on the higher mental plane, and the soul on the higher mental plane is considered objective compared to our what is forming as a vehicle on the Buddhic plane. For many of us, let us say, let him set the waters of living substance in motion by his idea and impulse, bending the builders to his purpose and plan. The waters of living substance. So water is matter, and this type of water is not astral alone, though the astral waters are very important in this set of rules. But waters are wider than that. The waters of space are more than that. You know, we have to watch out for these interchangeable terms. You know, sometimes water is water. Sometimes water is matter. Matter can be very extensive. Then we have to deal with matter and substance. And all of this can come under the title of water. So anyway, we have an idea. An idea comes from the soul, and it is formulated with greater clarity upon the mental plane, and then it has to gather more living water around it. It has to be fed and nourished by that which is found on the astral plane. The Agni Suryans are involved here, and it has to be further strengthened through the Agni Chaitans, the lower Agni Chaitans of the etheric level, and eventually Agni Chaitans will be involved, I suppose, on the dense physical level. So these are really excellent set of instructions. Let him build with judgment and skill. Immediately we think of Libra, and balance, let's just say, and balance of Libra, preserving always the stool of the director. Those of us, in the old days, the director of a motion picture sat on a stool with a megaphone, sometimes in the silent movie days, making his voice be heard. Now, where does the director sit these days? It's changed a great deal. But anyway, presuming always the observer, who is directing the proper arrangement of all of the elements involved in the creation, and coming not down into close contact with his thought form. So this involves soul identification. Can we be the soul in incarnation, and even later the soul on its own plane, but not getting in the middle of it all and arranging and rearranging? Even in the motion picture industry and in theater, there are those sort of directors who mix into the whole thing and kind of demand imitation on the part of their actors. And there are those who, with the power of the voice and the mind, can evoke from the actor that which is necessary. Let him project in time and space his form through visualization, meditation, and skill in action, and so produce that which his will commands, his love desires, and his need creates. The power of projecting the creation, this involves also an etheric creation, apparently. So, but it's necessary to visualize and meditate, yes, and act. Three factors involving the first three rays, and so produce that which his will commands, his love desires, and his need creates. Now look, command, first ray; desire, second ray, the higher correspondence of the sixth ray, and need. Think of Saturn immediately and the throat center and the creativity needed. Okay, so we have, let's just say, the magician, M-A-G-N, MGN. Well, what would be wrong with that? I would say MGN. Okay, let's try this. MGN. Let's see, does it let me get away with this? Or is it going to demand it? MGN. All right. So the magician creates using the three factors in personality plus their synthesis in the soul. Okay. Visualization, meditation, skill, and action. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? Although in this case, the visualization seems to represent the second ray, meditation the first, and skill in action the third ray. We have to keep the correspondences clear if we can. Okay. All right. Let him withdraw the builders of the outer form, and let the inner builders of dynamic force push it forth into manifestation. This is, okay. Right, there I go again, forgetting. Okay. This is very Vulcanian. The push of birth is Vulcanian. Okay. This is the push of birth, of the birth process, and is related to Vulcan. Through the eye of the Creator are these inner builders brought to functioning, directed action. Through the word of the Creator were the outer builders guided. Through the ear of the Creator, the volume of the greater word vibrates through the water of space. So this is the eye is involved. The eye is involved with directing the inner builders. Now, always the eye is more advanced, a more advanced instrument of sensation, reception, than is the ear. The ear comes first, the eye comes later. The touch comes in between them. 765, ear, touch, hearing, touch, and seeing, the eye. Through the word of the Creator were the outer builders guided, but the inner eye, the third eye, particularly, the eye of Shiva, the inner eye is directing the inner builders. Thus, maybe it is correct to put visualization first, and one can meditate, M-E-D-T, meditate upon that which is visualized. And through the ear of the Creator, the volume of the greater word vibrates through the waters of space, so we retain soul contact. We retain through this whole process the contact with the solar angel, or the creative force within the causal body. You know, not the entire solar angel, but its representative. which I have been calling, you know, the angel of the presence. Okay, always there is a question about whether we can save this particular document, and certainly I hope we have. Let him remember the order of creative work. The waters of space respond to the word. The builders build, the cycle of creation ends, and the form is adequate in manifestation. The cycle of performance succeeds and depends for its duration on the potency of the inner builders, who constitute the subjective form and transmit the vitalizing life. So certainly in one way, uh, um, in one way, in other words, in one way, the elemental forces of the outer worlds respond to, as it says here, the word of the Creator, to the word of the Creator, who is responding to the word of the soul. So, you know, all of this is so important, and he's really giving us the ABCs of everything that has to be done by the magician, and if we were attentive enough, we would understand this. Let him remember that the cessation of the form ensues when purpose is achieved, or when impotency of will produces failure of functioning in the cycle of performance. So, completion or impotency of will mark the cessation of the form and its work in the world. This is something good to remember, even about the continuation of that thought form that we call the physical form. The will can keep it in manifestation until the purpose is achieved. So, purpose of the form continues, or when impotency of the will produces failure, as sometimes happens, and as we can record in our own daily life, moments of failure through impotency of the will. Now, what I want to do here is I kind of want to separate these things, if possible. So here's the techniques, and I know this is just a little tedious, but it has its purpose, so we can study them with greater, all right, I did it there, and here, and whoop, and here, and here, and here he's projecting, and here. They should all actually be, this is the push of the birth, which is related to good old Vulcan, yes. Okay, all right, looks like we have it here. So, the order of creative work, builders respond, and so forth. Right, and you know, if you don't mind, even though it's not in the book here, I would like to number these, if possible. So, you know, it just helps because it's such a cogent method of working, you know, so important. Yeah. And if we could follow these suggestions, we could all become white magicians, and let us remember that we'll never be members of hierarchy unless we are white magicians. Okay, that was 5. And this should be disappear. Okay. It's a good time to go get a drink of water or something. Okay. Well, I'm just trying to roll along here and save time. Let's see how many he has given us. One can even lose count. This is a 9, and this is a 10 here. And that's it. 10 points. I think it's 10. Well, that has to be studied long and hard. That has to be studied with care. Each one of those. Let's kind of, take a look and review what he considers to be these methods of form building. Be the builder, not the building. Don't get involved with all the raw material, but act instead as the agent of a higher power. But don't, get too much involved in the hands-on because you're learning how to work with the mind. Let him use 2 energies and 3 laws. There, I think I want to emphasize that, huh? Somehow. I do. And then he tells us what these laws are. They are 2 energies, purpose and magnetism, and then something corresponding to the 3 cosmic laws. Okay. So send the call out to the periphery and set the waters in motion, bending all the builders, learning how to manipulate the elementals and work with the devas, learning how to build with those Libran factors, judgment and skill, and stay detached. And again, not in the midst of one's creation. One has a kind of a hands-off attitude, but a mind on. Mind on, hands off, using the eye of the mind. Then comes projection, and he uses visualization, meditation, and skill in action to project into the field of time and space, which is essentially more the etheric physical plane than anything else. And he's going to produce what will, love, and creativity can produce. So then he no longer concentrates on the builders of the outer form, but the dynamic inner builders are controlled with his eye, and he uses them. The inner builders of the dynamic force of dynamic force push his form into manifestation. That's really important. They are the final actors in this process of moving his form into manifestation. So, and DK is specific about what guides what, and it's the forces of the eye. And then keeping everything in order, really, that's what is the next thing. Keeping it all in order. So we have the idea, we have the form, we built accordingly, and then we're trying to help the waters of space nurture the form. And we do that with the word, and certain builders build. and then a point of adequacy in the creation is reached, and the form has to get out there and do its work. The building stage is over, uh, and if the inner builders have been very strong in creating the proper form, which is in line with the soul, vitality will keep that form in manifestation long enough to accomplish its ends until the purpose is achieved. Now, the will directs all this, and if we fail in terms of will, then we have an abortive situation and we fail to bring our form into manifestation. Now, I wonder which one of us is not involved in creating some form or other which will help with the hierarchical process. Whether that form is a work of art, a book, an organization, a process of some kind. We're trying to make a difference on the physical plane, but we're trying not only to work as the average person works, that I've got an idea, so let's do it, but we're trying to work in a much subtler manner in which we take advantage of certain types of lives who are willing to cooperate with us and who respond to our inner knowledge. Now, all of that inner knowledge is not yet in our hands. Maybe most of us can work better with our mind and hands right now, hands-on, than we can through meditation to make something happen without the application of the usual hands-on in the midst of the physical process. But eventually we'll be able to make things appear without the hands having to be involved in the handiwork. The mind itself can create the handiwork. You might ask, where are the hands of the planetary logos? Well, it's all done with his mind, and of course Mercury rules the hands and the 5 fingers of every hand, and Mercury also rules the thought process. All of this is very Mercurian in its conception, and then setting the relationship with the devas and the elementals into the proper pattern, and then watching their work materialize the form. But we have to learn about all these things. Right now, sometimes hard Saturnian labor is required before we can really make things appear. But we've all seen, the films and the examples of a person who thinks something into existence and just makes it appear without going out and touching and doing all the rest of it. I'm recalling a movie where a very wise man was looking at the struggles of a young person in the window across the courtyard. And this girl, she was very hungry and not fed well or anything like that. And suddenly in her room, without him going there, a wonderful feast appeared. He did it all with his mind, and he made that appearance occur. And one day, like the planetary logos, we'll be able to make the appearance happen with the proper words of power and the proper methods of visualization and all that. We'll be able to make the appearance occur. We're on our way to becoming that type of magician, which is a lot less crude than the method of physical method of using the hands and feet. But in the beginning, we do have to use the hands and feet, and the Christ says so, by human hands and human feet. Christ in the desert with that dark figure that looks a whole lot like Master M. Students would do well to study these cycles of creative building, of performance through the form, that is, and of subsequent disintegration. It's all basically it's Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma aspect, or maybe we should reverse it, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. It goes both ways, really. Shiva starts the whole thing, but Brahma is the creator, and Vishnu holds the form in existence. It's the preserver. It's very Jupiterian, and then there is Shiva bringing about the disintegration. In a way, Shiva is the beginning and the end. They are true of a solar system, of a human being, and of the thought forms of a creative thinker. So don't get, let us not get too attached to our thought forms. As DK says, he's imprisoned a lot of lesser lives with all the books he's written, and one day he's going to have to free them. And I guess no matter how good a presentation of knowledge is, it wears out eventually and is no longer applicable. Some of the great classics, though, may last a long time now. There's something that was apparently written in Atlantean days by a great astrologer who was one of the giants, I guess literally a giant, who was called Asura Maya. Surya is there and Maya is there, and it's called the Surya Siddhanta, and it's managed to survive. But so often everything has its term, much shorter term. And where is the wisdom of the previous solar system? Well, there's been some survival there in form of the Old Testament, but what about the solar system before that and before that? So everything has its term, just as a universe has its term. Okay, they are true of a solar system, of a human being, and of the thought forms of a creative thinker. The secret of all beauty lies in the right functioning of these cycles. There is something to ponder on. So, and let's just say, which would lead to harmony and not dissonance. If we act out of timing with cycles, then we're going to produce a dissonant situation, which is awkward and painful to perceive. Dissonance and pain are, well, just about equivalent. Just about equivalent, dissonance. Okay. The secret of all success on the physical plane lies in right understanding of law and of order. These are words which have come into the public mind of late and usually indicate some kind of repressive process, but there is a divine order and there are divine laws. So, the seventh ray brings about the success of the manifestation process. So basically no success in terms of manifestation without the seventh ray. For the aspirant, the goal of his endeavor is the correct building of forms in mental matter, remembering that as a man thinketh, so is he. That for him the control of mental substance and its use in clear thinking is an essential to progress. Let's just say as the aspirant ASP bridges into mental focus and usefulness. Usually when we say the word aspirant, we do mean someone who is quite emotionally polarized and spends a lot of time wishing and aspiring rather than, let's say, thinking, so that the thinking process can contribute to the manifestation of that towards which the aspirant aspires, what he desires, what he wishes. Okay, so that's for the aspirant. Correct building of forms in mental matter. Okay. The will, and we're all aspirants in that respect, right? This work will demonstrate an organization of the outer life, maybe the sixth ray that is characteristic of aspirants tends to incline that aspirant towards a rejection of the seventh ray. We remember, in the Destiny of the Nations, the sixth ray monads are the only type that will not really get along well with the seventh ray monads. And there, of course, he's giving us quite a hint about monads, that they're not only on the first three rays, but on the monadic plane can be found on any of the seven, which has interesting implications. This will demonstrate an organization of the outer life in creative work of some kind, a book written, a picture painted, a home functioning rhythmically, a business run along sound and true lines, a life salvaged, either one's own or those close to one. I'm thinking about the 12-step programs, Al-Anon and Narcanon, all these things where you use a system of steps fulfilled in an orderly manner in order to salvage the life, and the outer dharma carried out with precision, whilst the inner adjustment proceed in the silence of the heart. So this is the well-regulated life. Now for the disciple, the work extends. Yeah, I'm going to finish this. I don't know what will be the exact timing, but it won't be 3 hours and it won't be 2 hours. It'll be a little more. But, I just have to get this out regardless of those outer strictures. For the disciple, the work extends. Now let us consider ourselves as disciples in training. For him, there has to be realization of the group plan and purpose, and not simply of his own individual spiritual problem. And that's how Master DK trained his students. He discussed their individual problem, but he also discussed what the group was trying to accomplish and what might be the role of the disciple in that particular group, and how responsible the disciple was to carry forth his place in the proper manner. Say this, there has to be conformity to the purpose of the immediate cycle and life period. Otherwise, we fall into illusion, right? When we're trying to do the right thing at the wrong time. A type of illusion. He'll deal with this. Maybe, we'll work on glamour. We have been working on glamour. And that book will emerge, or at least our commentary on it through our webinars. We'll be discussing that. The subordinating of his personal dharma and ideas to the need and service of that cycle, and let's just say very demanding. Because as I've often said, DK said, look, you're not going to participate in the reappearance of the Christ if you're simply interested in expressing your own soul. For him, there has to be that attainment of knowledge, of strength, and of coordination between the personal self and the soul, which will result in the ability to build organized forms and groups on the physical plane and hold them coherently together. Okay, well, a lot of us are safe. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Save, fail. All right. Knowledge, strength, and building organized, holding them together. I think, a lot of us are involved in that kind of thing. We have our groups and our methods of service, and we try to offer them in such a way that they are of value, they're fairly organized, fairly clear, and they hang together long enough to do something of value. This he does not through the force of his own character and equipment, but because that character and equipment enable him to act as a transmitter of the greater life energies and to serve as an efficient cooperator with the plan, of which he can vision only a fragment. So, not forcing this to happen, but radiating the divine plan. And then it happens more automatically. So not through the in other words, there's such things as dominating personalities that get things together, make things happen, and so forth. But what do they represent? Now, maybe, some people are very humble about the whole thing, and yet things occur because they are in the position that they are in. So the character equipment is so aligned with the divine plan that what should happen is happening. He works, however, faithfully at the building of his aspect of the great plan, and finds one day when the building is completed and he sees the whole, that he has built true to design and in conformity with the blueprints as they have been carried in the minds of the architects, in this Masonic imagery here, the elder brothers, who in their turn are in touch with the mind of the one existence. And let's just call this, in this case, it is the planetary logos. Could be, be later the solar logos or greater beings still. So that's something, we just don't force things to happen. We are so aligned with what must happen, and our character is so cooperative with that which must happen, that others sense the pattern of the greater coming through the lesser pattern which we are, and will cooperate. So building in conformity with greater patterns which are held out and presented to the builders in such a way that they know what is the next step. The practical application of these truths is of utmost importance. There is no life. Here we go. This is going to be an exhortation, and the Tibetan is wonderful at those. You just have to appreciate the way he inspires others, just intelligently and beautifully, and in a way that does not order them about or compromise their integrity, but just makes them want to do what must be done. The practical application of these truths is of utmost importance, even the lowly, right? There is no life so circumscribed and no person so situated who cannot begin to work intelligently and to build thought forms under the law with divine understanding. Many people, I know them, some. What I do doesn't make any difference. I'm just a little person of no account. And so therefore I don't have to work, Therefore I don't have to discipline myself. Therefore I can have things a little easier. There is no day in any man's life. Master Moria says, lose not an hour. Master DK is kind of saying, lose not a day. There is no day in any man's life, particularly if he is an aspirant or a disciple, when a man cannot work in mental matter, control his use of thought, watch the effect of his mental processes on those he contacts, and so handle his chitta, or mind stuff, as Patanjali calls it, that he becomes more and more useful. How practical, we just want to say, how very practical, and how inspiring. I find myself re-inspired when I read these things. We're on the track here, all of us, if we wish and if we will. But we have to will rather than just wish. We're on the track to entering the fifth kingdom of nature, taking the initiations pertinent to that kingdom and making a difference in our own little way. And we have to be willing to make a difference in our own little way, like the little bird that carried just a drop of water repeatedly to help quench the forest fire. Get enough little birds and enough little drops, and we'll put out that raging destructive fire. And we're certainly presented with those fires even now, here in 2018, maybe the hottest year ever and the burningest year. Somehow we have to quench the fires by friction with solar fire. Well, okay, so much good material that I just hate to leave it. I have that terrible tenacity of wanting to extract everything possible. Everything possible. Okay, so it's not June, July, 6 August. Then I'll pull this thing down, hoping for the best. Always getting lost at the end. This is a longer program, and I kind of intended to cut it at 2 hours, but I saw that we were just about there at the next section. So this is the end of a treatise on white magic, and it's number 18, Rules for Magic. It's number 10 is 10.2, and it's some page 281. Yeah, page 281. And the next one will be number 19. It's a little more efficient way, isn't it? 10.3. And by the way, this is, so I don't forget, 6 August 18. And I don't know when I will do the next one. I always hope to, but then something may arise or some unavoidable fatigue may come, and it's not what I would wish, but there it is. All right, so we will go on with these rules for work on the astral plane, and it is especially rule number 10, which, as I counted it before, was some, in the book, some 170 pages almost, with amazing material. Now, our job is to see this amazing material, think it into rationality. It's got to make sense to us, is what I mean. Help think it into the consciousness of humanity and spread the word so people will begin thinking along these lines rather than just believing along childish and foolish lines, which are, as Blavatsky would say, unphilosophical and which ultimately make no sense and contradict the reality which the ageless wisdom reveals. Okay, friends, so that's going to be it for the moment, and however long this is, we'll just have to live with it, okay? See you soon. Study hard.